live in the dungeon. This is the Dream Warrior Review. I'm Kurt Thomas.
I'm Mick Strawn.
And this is a very special episode 100.
100, 100, 100, 100.
To celebrate episode 100, we are going to be reviewing A Nightmare on Elm Street 4, The Dream Master.
Hey, Kurt, what's it about?
It's about this little guy named Freddy, and he returns once again to terrorize the dreams of the remaining Dream Warriors, as well as those of the young woman who may be able to defeat him for good.
What did you guys think of Dream Warriors 4? Or Freddy 4? Or Nightmare on Elm Street 4? Or the fourth one?
Let's call it A Nightmare on Elm Street 4 because it's not just about Freddy. There are some amazing characters in A Nightmare on Elm Street 4. So other than Freddy's Dead, my other favorite when I was like in my newer stages of being a fan was A Nightmare on Elm Street 4. I loved Alice. Yes, I loved it. I love the MTV aspect. I love the music. I love how fun it is. For me, I'm pretty sure I mentioned this before, but I'll reiterate. When I pictured Freddy and when I would draw Freddy, it would always be part 4 Freddy. So it always stuck out in my mind. It's just one of those really fun movies, and it's so fitting that we're talking about it during its 30th anniversary year, and I think the special effects are phenomenal. I love the teenagers. I love that there's, people, or rather characters who defy stereotypes like Sheila. Not only is she, this really kind of down-to-earth nerd who's not too nerdy, but she's also a black girl nerd, and that's so wild. And it's great that she's in this movie, and we have characters like Debbie who stand out, and we've got a little bit of the Dream Warriors, which it was kind of really sad to see them go so early, and I know that we'll probably talk about that, but I love the character of Alice. I think she's incredibly, pardon my language, but badass. Her ability to absorb the little bits and pieces of her friends is so.
I always thought that it was a very trippy concept.
It is, but you know what? It's kind of symbolic in a way because it's like the nature versus nurture thing. Who you become is made up of all your friends and the lessons you take away from your friends, and it's kind of like that element of growing up. It's
the literal embodiment of it.
Yeah, exactly.
I love that symbolism that you just correlated with that. I've never really thought about that until right now.
Yeah.
I love that.
And it's like when she looks at herself in the mirror, she's reflecting on that. I mean, she sees herself, and the more she can find out who she is through, unfortunately, the deaths, or rather the influences of her friends, the more she sees herself in the mirror and the more she's willing to take down the pictures. Like at the very end, she takes them down. She's like, these are the people who made me who I am. These are the people who matter to me and who have sculpted me into somebody. And I'm ready to face the world because here I am. I'm looking at myself and I'm not afraid of the real me.
I have to admit this is that none of my friends have yet showed up on my stomach. I'm just saying. I mean, if that's gonna happen, I want to know if I could get them removed. Is that possible? Is there kind of like a thing for that?
You just have to look at yourself in the mirror, Mick, and then they'll just burst through you and rip your head open. And
Can you see yourself in the mirror?
Wait, is that one of those procedures that you get?
Well, as long as Freddy's your doctor and it's not Dr. Seuss.
Yes, and those scalpel blades.
Oh my God!
It's funny. In writing this book, I was talking to Andres about him, and I also talked to Rick Barker and Robert about this, messing around in the waterbed scene when the blades, when Robert is wearing these blades. That Robert and Rick both, when they were doing the stunts with Andres in there. Andres said that it was not very comfortable knowing that he was in the water with a set of razor blades that were made to be cutting that waterbed. That they tried to think of every way they could to get around it, and they eventually just wound up with just cutting the waterbed with the blades, which was
nice.
That's
probably one of my favorite scenes.
Yeah, so when Robert's jumping up and down and bringing his claw down and stuff. He's got those razor blades on. Woo, boy. Yeah.
I saw a behind the scenes feature about that scene, and I just remember, I don't think I've ever seen like Robert like yell or say anything on set, but that behind the scenes of that where he's, you know, part of my friend, she's like, I'm only doing this one more take. We got to have the shot at some point. He's like, let's get this done. I was like, holy crap. Like, cause he's like covered in water and like, you know, just, you could tell he just was like, let's get this done. How many times did you guys film that?
I have to point this out. The greatest thing in that film is not Robert yelling or anything like that, because it's expected. Everybody's been pushed to the limit right there. Mm-hmm. But there's a woman that is the first AD, very short hair, very short person. Her name is Mary Ellen Woods. And she's the one that has the ping pong face in the middle of that scene. In the making of, mm-hmm. And she's the one that's just looking from face to face to face to face, like she's watching a tennis match with the calmest look.
Yeah,
you know, it's just like with this, like she kind of walked around with this certain zen to her that was amazing. You know? She just like, and I remember I was actually there at that. But I was doing what I do best, which was staying the hell out of everybody's way and trying to figure out what I could do about it. But I distinctly remember seeing that discussion and I just loved the look on her face, just like, mm-hmm. Okay. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And she, I mean, you know, considering that everybody that was all the stresses that were involved in that film, and it was amazing because everybody was going just in one direction. We were working it, you know,
right?
And mm-hmm. Everybody was on a creative wave that was on that film. That person, Mary Ellen Woods, is part of the reason that everybody could just keep going forward, and she kept us all together.
Well, you have to have somebody like that among chaos.
Oh, yeah,
right?
yeah.
Because otherwise, then everybody's just panicking.
Oh, yeah. No, absolutely. Everybody thinks that the most important element and the most important person is a director. But I'll tell you right now is try and be a great director without a great first AD. And it is not going to happen because the AD is the guy that pulls it together. And you have to understand what happens and how this works. There can only be so many people working in one spot at one given time, right? Mm-hmm. So when you're filming, you have to create this incredible choreography that brings people from the outside, you know, into the set in the order that they have to be there, and make sure that all of them are ready to do what they need to do at this moment, and keep that going for days and days and days. And it's a very difficult job.
What do you think was the most difficult either scene to shoot? Like, where were the tensions really high on set? Was there a particular scene that was hard?
The waterbed sequence and the Freddy Church, those were the really, really, really hard sequences. They all involved a lot of people, and in the church, I don't think anybody was prepared for it because it had been written very late. Mm-hmm. People didn't really think that the church was going to work because of the set, because you have to understand something, and it's something that I point out in the book, and I don't think anybody ever brought this up. That was not a set. It wasn't in the classic definition of what you think a set is. It didn't have any walls. It was a bunch of pieces that were floating out in the middle of nowhere. Mm-hmm. There was kind of window frames that kind of looked like windows, and there was these two huge doors that were in a flat, and all you could see were the stones on the edge. And then we just wrapped Dubatine around the whole room.
Wow.
And people always talk, well, wait a minute, you had an entire altar boy area with an organ behind it and everything. I said, really? Do you really think that's what you're looking at? Because do you know what you're...
Don't ruin the power of film for people, Mick. Like, let them believe. Let them think. I'm one of those people. Like, that's one of my favorite scenes in the entire movie.
Well, then you know what? I fooled you.
You fooled me. You totally did. I have to say that, like, and I don't know if you guys would agree, but like in the whole franchise, there are very like iconic things that stick out. And obviously, number one is the Nightmare on Elm Street house. So, like, the house itself, 1428 Genesee, like, is so iconic to a Nightmare on Elm Street. But I also feel like that church is like the second most iconic thing. Like, because I think that, you know, after Nancy, there really wasn't like a strong, true, like, final girl until there was Alice. And so Alice, I feel like that's where her showdown was, as to where Nancy's showdown was at the house. And so even when it picks back up in like part 5, like, it's the symbolism behind it is so amazing. But just the set itself, like, the whole thing is just so beautiful. You know, the stained glass windows, the little kids standing up in the church choir, like the decor, the horrible wig on Lisa Wilcox's stunt double, like just everything. But it's so iconic. Like, I just remember when I first saw Nightmare 4, you know, Nightmare 4 is like right up there with Dream Warriors for me. It's I feel like the two of them go hand in hand really well together. I feel like you can watch. I do too. I have start that.
I go well together, yes, but I like 3 so much more.
Really?
Yeah.
Really? See,
why is that?
I enjoy watching 3 just as a movie overall. Just I find it more enjoyable. This just feels like 4 feels like they just took a bunch of things that have happened and just smashed them all together. Doesn't really flow as smoothly as 3 does.
Really? Because I thought 4 flowed really
There's
easy.
some really I like the
really
scene where they
easily.
repeat itself. I love that part where
Right.
So do you think that you feel that way because you know a lot of the behind the scenes stuff? Like, a lot of times when you know everything that happened on set or know a lot about the movie, it kind of changes your opinion of a film. Do you think, had you not known that, like, they were filming things on the spot, changing the script daily,
Maybe.
that, like, they didn't even really have a script or a storyline, do you think that you wouldn't feel that way?
I guess there's a possibility that that's part of it, but I guess on the surface I didn't think about that. But I thank you for pointing that out. Now I have to rethink it.
You know,
God.
I know. Well, I mean, that's why we're here.
I've said this a million times, and I've said at the beginning that I saw the two of them. I've always thought that Nightmare on Elm Street 3 is a better film. I don't think that there's a doubt about that.
Right.
But deep down inside, I have to say that I like Nightmare on Elm Street 4 a lot better. Even though I know it's a basically more flawed and simpler film to a certain extent, I just like it better because it has a certain design and shock element to it. It really looks like the edge of the 80s.
Well, I'm almost afraid to say this, but one reason why I don't like 4 too is because I don't
Yes.
really like Tuesday Night very much.
Oh,
And
What?
Paul's over.
I knew I would get that reaction. But no, I'm comparing it to
how
like
dare you?
I'm comparing it to Arquette.
He
Arquette was
paused
amazing.
before.
No,
He was like,
hey,
I don't
I'm
really
with
like
him 100.
long
I am
pause.
with.
And then he said it.
I mean, they replaced her
Tuesday's my
with
girl. She's
Tuesday
like a
Night,
good
that's
friend
my
of mine.
point.
Like, that kills me that you
right.
say that.
It's not that I don't like Tuesday Night, just I like the person she replaced a lot better.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
really all it is.
It's true.
Yeah.
And
So, yeah.
So,
See,
oh, go ahead.
I just think that number 4 is such a fun film. I guess when I first watched it, it wasn't that I was trying to look for like deep plot elements. It all made sense to me. Now, my biggest gripe is how early on the rest of the Dream Warriors die. But at the same time, it's like, you know, Alice is such a good character, and I think the special effects are awesome. Like, you know, the revival of Freddy via fiery dog pee, and like that whole sequence when he's coming together, and you've got, you know, Freddy being ripped apart, and like all of
The ending was
those
spectacular.
special effects
Yeah.
to me are
the ending
just
was amazing.
I love the
totally
ending.
stellar.
Yeah, the ending was
Really,
great.
don't get me wrong. My biggest complaint about this movie is that there's a
Rest
rubber
in
arm in
hell.
it. And I remember going to see it with Mick, and when we were talking about the movie, he was like, "Every terrible movie needs a rubber arm in it." That's all I could think about.
Oh my God.
Yeah, but I actually liked it. But really, I was like laughing about that the whole time.
That's hilarious. No, I agree. I think so. I look at it like differently, and I don't know if it's because we're so engraved like in the film series and in the community. But I tend to look at it differently. I look at the character of Kristen as 2 totally different characters.
Yes, I never saw. Yeah, I honestly never saw them as being the same character.
It's not really. an extension of it, really.
I mean,
Right.
they don't physically look like each other. They don't even have body styles
Right.
at all. Like,
the same mom.
oh, come
The
on.
same mom.
Come on.
They
Hey,
have the
listen.
same mom.
The same mom
So-
and blonde
so,
hair.
wait a
and
minute,
That's about it.
Well, no, I feel like in Dream Warriors, like I feel like Patricia's portrayal of Kristen was so good, and don't get me wrong, like I get why people like the Patricia Arquette, Kristen, but I don't really feel like sometimes people make her character out to be bigger than it actually was. I feel like of the character development, all of the other characters in Dream Warriors was so much more than just Kristen's. I feel like if you break it down, like even Patricia Arquette doesn't even have that many lines. She's just really there.
Mhm.
And so when you come into like Dream Master, I feel like the character in itself has evolved. So I feel like it's okay that it's a different actress. Yes, it like would have been great to have her reprise it, but I feel like Tuesday's portrayal of it is something completely different. Now, nobody in this, cast is, at that time was Oscar award winning, but I feel like her portrayal of it is different. I feel like she's like jaded. She's more like, in a sense, she's fucked up, like, you see her
Smoking,
smoking, right?
all
Like you
that.
see her smoking. She's like a loner. She's realizing she's losing her friends. Like, I think it sucks that the Dream Warriors got killed off so soon. But one of the things I wanted to point out, when you guys were talking about like the look of the film, that opening scene where it's the back-to-back house when she runs in and then runs out of the house and it's the mirrored house from it was
Mhm.
so bone chilling as a kid. I was like, oh my God, because everyone has that dream. You have that dream where you go to dial the phone, you can't dial the numbers, or you run into something and it's, the same thing that you just came out of. It was brilliant.
Nightmare on Elm Street 4 had better dream sequences. It had dream sequences that were honestly like
They
dreams.
did.
I mean, there was a misplacement, a disjointedness, and let's face it, the sets looked an awful lot like you were in a dream.
Right. Are you ready for another gasp?
Okay.
All right, hit me with it.
I thought Freddy was a little too comic in this one. That's another problem I have. Is
Oh,
he's not
bite
very
your
good at stand-up
tongue.
comedy, but he's really good at pest control.
Yes.
I got to give him that.
Well, this is the film when I think it really switches over between more serious Freddy to more of the comedic version of Freddy. But this is the time period when they were trying to make Freddy appeal to the mainstream audiences. I mean, now was the time for merchandise. Now was the time for, appealing to kids. I mean, he really had to be this personality, this character that people just loved. And I think this is the moment when he really became sort of this lovable icon that you just wanted to own because he was fun. He was kind of funny. Yes, he was a little scary. So you had that feeling that you kind of controlled him. But, Freddy was really becoming this pop culture icon at that time. And I think that that's when, it happened at part 4. And so that's why there's that big shift.
Oh, I get it now. You need the one-liners to make the Freddy Krueger doll that you pull the string and it says you have to have one-liners for
Yeah,
that. So that's why they put one-liners in
exactly.
it.
Listen,
Yes.
It's all about merchandising. It's not
Exactly.
about the movie.
he was resurrected with
I
dog
agree
piss.
with you,
All
Fred.
right.
Yes.
No, I agree. I agree with you. I feel like he was almost too funny. Like, I feel like it was the start of it, but I think a lot of that also was from the success from Dream Warriors and Robert doing a lot of like press and being like on like the Joan Rivers show. And so I think a lot of that came from his personality, people actually seeing who Robert Englund was and him like playing with the glove and being funny. I think that then is what parlayed it into Dream Master. So like here we have Robert, promoting the films and promoting Freddy Krueger, and he's charismatic and he's funny himself. And so then when they go to do part 4, that then comes across on screen as well.
Well, I do like his swagger. He definitely had some swagger in this one they didn't
Oh
have.
yeah. Oh yeah.
Well, it's what we discussed with Mick before. I mean, it was that intentional choice of, Robert had to be this personality. We had to make it not so, you had to put like limitations on him and you had to
Right.
make him likable. And because that was something that, Robert really had, they just really pushed him to the forefront.
You go with the strengths that you have. You have to understand that this is the guy with the mask that can act through it. Right? This is not Michael Myers. This is not
Right.
Leatherface. This is Freddy Krueger, and Freddy Krueger he's got personality, and he's got.
Well, you can see his face.
And
too.
he's
I mean,
got
that's
yeah.
part of it.
Well, but he also
mean-
has the thing is Robert went so far beyond that in it. As the editor put it, I was interviewing the editor for the book, and he says that there was a discussion going around about whether or not Robert was going to be on this one, and the discussion between the editors was, well, he's just a guy in a mask, right?
Oh,
and then
hell
the
no.
day, and then the film came, the dailies came from the junkyard. And Michael Canu turned to Chuck Weiss and says, look at this shot. And they were looking at the shot that goes across the car parts and then comes up, and you see Freddy standing there.
Mm-hmm.
He says, right.
You shouldn't have buried me. I'm
And
not
Michael
dead.
Canu goes, that's
a
not
great
a guy
scene.
in a mask.
Right. Yeah.
He says, that's an actor. That's a real actor right there. And it's true.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, still to this day, it's the first guy that's come up that's even close in the horror film realm to me is Skarsgård.
Oh, yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I mean, really.
Yeah, totally.
You
I
know,
feel
every
like-
time I see him out of makeup, Skarsgård, that's the point. It's like with Robert, you see him out of makeup and he looks like such this gentle soul back in the day. So cute with his little curly blonde hair. And you look at Skarsgård and you're like, every time I see him, he just turned, 28 maybe? And I'm
Yeah.
like, God, you're only a couple years older than me. But watching him as Pennywise and then
really
just
does.
seeing him interviewed, I'm like, you're just a kid. But what you're able to accomplish behind that makeup is just phenomenal.
Oh, but he can look creepy without his makeup.
Oh, he can look creepy.
Yeah.
His makeup.
I don't know if you've caught any of Castle Rock, but he looks creepy in a couple shots in that movie. In
Yeah,
that show.
Castle Rock.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Not to like
Oh,
get
yeah.
off topic, but what a lot of people don't know about Skarsgård is when he does that eye thing in it, that's him really doing it.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
like he
crazy.
can really
Mhm.
make his eyes shift that way. And it's
Mhm.
just so I actually feel like he would make a good Freddy Krueger.
Prequel.
I feel
Oh,
like
yeah.
Prequel.
Yeah.
like in the prequel, I feel like he could be a good Springwood slasher. Because they both
Mhm.
have that quality. Both him and Robert have that same je ne sais quoi quality.
See, to me, it's either him or Ribisi, you know?
Yeah.
Right? Am I
Oh
right?
my God, I
to
could totally
me,
see Giovanna
he
Ribisi
totally
being
has,
Yeah.
he has the full
Yeah.
package that would make an amazing Freddy Krueger.
Or they could just go full comedy and do Will Ferrell.
But
No.
Adam
I'm
Sandler
with,
is
I'm with you.
Freddy
Like I don't
Krueger.
like the funny Freddy. Like I'm totally with you on this. Like I'm not a fan of like the humor in Freddy. And in Dream Master, I feel like it was so like tolerable. You know, it wasn't too over the top like when you get to like Freddy's Dead or anything like that. But I really feel like what makes Dream Master set apart is Lisa Wilcox. I feel like the portrayal of Alice, you know, it's another strong female character. And I love what Deandra said at the beginning of this episode about how, you know, it's a symbolism thing and taking on the strengths of your friends and overcoming stuff. Like this film, like who knew, you know, back in 1988 when you guys were filming this, that like this is what people would relate to this day, you know, that like they would see this strong female character who kicks Freddy's ass in the most epic way ever, and then that death of Freddy is just so like iconic. It's so beautiful and haunting, and it just is so cool.
Now, you can disagree with me on this, but I really feel that Alice is without a doubt the character who goes through the biggest shift.
oh yeah, no
And
doubt.
it's not really just like between one
100%.
person to another. It's an
Oh, she loses a lot
evolution
of people.
between that mousiness and that kind of greasy hair to this confident woman who just grows up in front of you.
100%.
Freak inside.
And she was a freak inside that had weird bracelets in her drawers. Sorry, I had to go there.
I feel like Alice's character, I feel like her character development is the character development we wish we could have seen Nancy Thompson have.
yes.
Right.
So like Nancy,
No, that is-
Nancy
yeah,
Thompson.
That is true.
We get Nancy Thompson in 1, and then we get her in 3. And while she's great in 3, and you know, Dream Warriors is my favorite film of all time, but like while she's great in 3, we didn't see that progression. And I think
No.
that, you know, Alice's progression, I think that that's why another reason why we probably resonate with her is because we craved that for Nancy Thompson, and we got to actually see it with another person.
Paige, I almost feel like it was a regression, especially
Right.
at that very end, when you compare the two, but that's another discussion. But
No, definitely.
I agree with you.
definitely. You know, and I feel like that's another reason why she's just such a strong character.
Well, she's a great actress.
Oh, she's amazing.
Oh yeah.
Can I throw one out? Can I tell you who my
Yeah.
favorite actor in it was?
Who?
Andres Jones.
Oh.
On
I was gonna say
knew
Joey.
it.
Oh,
I
yes.
knew it. Oh my
We-
gosh.
We have a love for
bit of a
Andres.
crush. Just a smidge of a crush.
He's so sweet.
our
as a
little
person,
meatball.
and his we talked about on our radio show we talked about like his death, and we just said like how his character was like one of our favorite characters in the whole like franchise.
It's really funny because his character, when I interviewed him, and I was talking about Columbo, I said, your character
It's Columbo.
is Columbo. And he goes, geez, how did you even catch that?
I can
And
see
go,
that, yeah.
no, I said, totally. To me, you're channeling Falk, all the way through it. And he had a couple of other people that he said he was, using them. Definitely to me, he was, when you first see him and he jumps down and he comes up into that stoop, that sort of like that way that he would just slack his body down and then look at you with side eye.
Yeah.
Him and his side eye, it was totally Falk to me. And I really, and I might say this is, all that stuff that he was saying in the classroom and stuff when he started to talk, that was all his own dialogue. He wrote all that,
Yeah.
Yeah, he told us that. I feel like his character was probably the most relatable character in the entire film. Like everybody knows a Rick Johnson, like he was that brother, that best friend, that boyfriend. He just was like so relatable and a very real character. And I almost wonder if that is because Andras had said that he put so much of himself into that role.
Oh, yeah.
And so it just comes off screen like very like genuine.
Have you talked to all these people? I mean, literally, I have now talked
Yeah.
to all these people
Yeah.
for hours on end. This is what I've come down to. The characters that they played on the screen, that's who they are.
I was just gonna say that. Same with Toy Newkirk.
Absolutely.
Her whole idea when speaking to her, her mind over matter literally is pretty much her
That's
motto.
really-
I mean, she put her mind to so much and she overcame anything that might have been in the physical world just because she had that determination. And she was so fantastic to talk to and so inspirational because she had that mindset like
She is
Sheila.
one of my favorite interview for sure. I mean, you get done with her and you're 100% sure that you're friends for life. And Brooke Thies.
Yeah.
And Danny Hassel. Danny Hassel is
yeah.
exactly the same character. I mean, he talks the same way. He's just a party dude.
Yeah.
Hot shit hassle.
Hot shit hassle.
Hot
That's
shit
absolutely
hassle.
right.
And I think that I mean, we've talked about it and everybody can say it a million times over and over again, but that is what makes Elm Street so special is because these characters are real. I mean, you give a shit about these characters because they're real people in the way that these films are made. And that's another one of the reasons why I love Part 4 so much is because I think it's another one of those films like Dream Warriors where you just have this really great group of teenagers and actors who get along, who are likable, who are very real because they have those characters who are similar to them. And I love the dynamic of all of them. And they're so unique. They're not really stereotypical, like I said. And there's even Debbie. I mean, she's so unique in her own way. I mean, she's there with her dynasty and she doesn't like bugs, but yet there's something so unique about this tough chick. She's like a tough chick who's kind of a little bit soft in her own way. And I love it. Rick, he to me is, and slap me if you disagree, but I look at some of the Elm Street films and I feel like a lot of the girls really take care of a lot of the guys in the films. Like Don Thompson, he really wasn't a great guy. Glenn, he was kind of a dick, to be honest. I mean, all along the way, there are all these guys who just don't map up to the strength of the girls. But Rick really tried to take care of everyone around him. I mean, he really gave a damn about them, and he stands out because of that.
He still does.
I love the cast.
Don't forget Jake. You guys are forgetting about Jake.
Jake the dog.
Yeah.
Oh, Jake the dog.
Oh my god, that's hilarious.
Jason.
What happened?
Jason.
Was that intentional? That naming him Jason, was that intentional,
Yes,
Nick?
absolutely. Are you kidding?
knew
Come
it.
on.
Yeah.
Of course it was.
Well, because at that time wasn't like there a lot of talk of like Freddy versus Jason.
Oh, yeah,
but it just, like,
yeah.
unfortunately couldn't
Mhm.
happen.
Yeah. We had to get him back from space first.
Right.
The first time I saw Jason in that movie, I was like, Jason, definitely named after Jason Voorhees. He's even got spots on his face, like the spots in Jason's hockey mask. I mean, I was really reaching here.
Yeah.
But that was one of the first things I thought
Did
of.
anybody recognize Jake from The Hidden?
He was, he was in The
Yeah.
Hidden. Yeah, he was the dog of the same guy who was in part 4 and said, "Yo, baby, a sucking on the wrong
That's
nozzle."
right.
Right?
That's right.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Connection made in my head.
He became the creature that was inside of the stoned out hooker. Supposedly.
Oh my god. I admittedly have never seen The Hidden.
it's a good
so I'm
one.
gonna have
Oh
to
my
watch it
gosh,
now.
really?
Oh, it is so much fun.
Oh, The Hidden's a
I'm
great
just now
film.
catching up. I'm just catching up on a lot of like old school
Baby
horror.
Kyle MacLachlan.
Yeah, yeah. And Michael
Oh.
Nuri. Those guys were terrible. They were just.
Kyle MacLachlan to me will always be from Sex and the City. Like
Same.
some people know him from Twin Peaks. I know him from Sex and the City.
I know every time I see him in Twin Peaks, because I've watched
Oh, I
all
love
of Twin
Twin
Peaks.
Peaks.
I love Twin Peaks. But every time I saw him, I was like, Trey just can't get it up. He just can't get it up.
But no, the dog Jason, like that was perfect. Like that opening scene where like Kincaid is in the back of the car, like it just another scene that is just so chilling. Like when, Freddy like evolves and then he stands there and that shadow is there and the music is playing, the like nursery
Oh, yeah.
rhyme. It's like it's just so perfect. I feel like that's why Dream Warriors and Dream Master go so well together, because Dream Warriors in itself, out of all of the films, I feel like is the best cinematic film. Like it looks the best, it's scored the best. Like it just really looks like a real film.
Yes,
like not like an indie thing.
It's true. I have to say that the score, and this totally has to do with how little time that we had to make it, is that the score was done really quick. It was done by Greg Safin in 2 weeks, basically in his garage. So
Wow.
Really?
But then
But
you
I
go-
can't tell that it was done quickly, though, because
Yeah.
the score to me, like, I hear the themes in my head. Sometimes with some of the other
Dun,
movies,
dun, dun,
I have
dun.
difficulty. Yeah, I'm like the blink,
Yeah,
blink,
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 blink.
like the little xylophone kind of
Right?
sound.
No, he did.
Or it sounds like they're hitting like garbage cans at some point, like the big
Mhm.
drums.
I was just going to say the reason to me that it didn't last as well as some of the others is that he did use a lot of 80s equipment to do it that kind of moved on, right, was used right in that period, and then moved on and not used again, So
Right.
But I think that's so fitting for part 4, though. The MTV
yeah, no, absolutely.
Nightmare on Elm Street. I mean, I still think that score really stands out to me. There's like Alice's theme in there. I mean,
Right.
it's super memorable still to me. Maybe it's because it was so important to me coming out of the very beginning of my fandom and still loving it to this day. Like, if I had to sit down and watch a movie, if I'm having a bad day and I want to watch a movie that I don't really have to think about, but that is super fun and I enjoy and that makes me feel good, I think I'm going to sit down and watch Nightmare on Elm Street 4, because for me, it's fantastical. It's colorful. It's lively. It makes you energized.
It's like hanging out with your friend that doesn't require anything of you. Not
Right.
your friend that really, starts to think about, worldly stuff and things like that. It's like hanging out with a friend that just, sits on the other side of the sofa and occasionally looks at you and goes, "Yeah."
We have reached the end of today's episode. I know you want to hear more, so please tune in to episode 101. It'll be coming out later today, so please check back with us. And thank you for listening.